During the morning or evening rush hour, neighbours are likely to be leaving home or the office within minutes of each other, stopping at the same traffic lights and footing the bill for the luxury of travelling alone in a car. James Spencer is offering a cost-saving alternative. It's a register of people with and without cars who are prepared to share travelling expenses.
It's a concept that I think is going to help a lot of people to save a lot of money each year, let alone the maintenance costs on their cars and the advantages of meeting new people and the advantages to the environment.
It's an idea that may take some catching on, but James is optimistic.
I'd like to get right up past Maitland, Cessnock, all those surrounding areas. I think there's a need for it in Stockton, Nelsons Bay, Tanilba Bay, all around those areas, right down as far as Catherine Hill Bay, and who knows, it might go even further than that.
There's a lot more to pigeon racing than meets the eye. In fact, it's close to a science. 148 birds will be trucked north to Tweed Heads. Previously, they've barely been much further north than Port Stephens on training flights. But when they're released, the birds will track directly to their loft at Redhead, at best an 8-hour flight away. The birds have been raised here from chicks, especially for this one race. Their owners will come from all over Australia for a flutter on the annual event. Each bird is tagged and registered and has been selectively bred. What makes a good racing pigeon?
The breed of the bird itself. People put the best birds possibly they can afford into this race, and that's what makes a good bird.
It's one sport where the punters literally toss their money into the air.
So it's a funny sort of a game. It's not something you can go out and watch go around in circles. You've just got to sit at home and wait. Depends on the weather. If it's a fast day, they'll be fast. If it's slow, sit and sweat.
It was this monitoring station that returned the worst lead levels. It's just metres away from shops and houses and within the grounds of the Pasminko Metals Sulphide Works at Boolaroo.
We have an excellent reputation for complying with the SPCC licence requirements, and particularly so for stacks, where our measurements show that we have very low level of breaches.
But while the company's stack emissions remain mostly within the State Pollution Control Commission guidelines, air quality in the area is far from satisfactory. Levels in 1989 hit a high of about 7.5 micrograms of lead per cubic metre of air, with an average of 5.6. The safe level recommended by the National Health and Medical Research Council is 1.5 micrograms, while the World Health Organisation insists on readings as low as 0.5. Newcastle's Public Health Unit is currently studying the effects of such pollution on the area's children.
The readings there have been of concern to us for some time, and in 1989 we installed a new $11 million gas cleaning system and tall stack.
Pasminko's readings for 1990 indicate a lead level of 3.6 micrograms per cubic metre of air. Those figures were given to the SPCC almost 6 months ago and still haven't been made public. But don't hold your breath waiting. The 1989 figures were only released yesterday.
I think the government's really got to look at the situation and provide extra funding to make sure that the manning level is increased and that reports can be compiled and gotten out on time. It's just ridiculous to have to wait 18 months for a report.
Friends and family of the Hunter Valley's 7 competitors were wished well by the Lord Mayor at Newcastle's City Hall. 6,000 athletes from more than 50 countries will take part in the Olympic Games for intellectually disabled next week.
We have very good hopes for a lot of gold medals, actually. We have a lot from the local people here in the Hunter Valley.
15-year-old Tiffany Orr is the youngest member of the Australian team. She won 3 gold medals at the national titles in Melbourne last year, and she's one of our most promising competitors.
I think she has very good chances again, but in particular in the vaulting. She's doing very well at the vaulting at the moment.
I feel good. and I really want to compete against other people. I love competing.
The Australian team leaves for the Games on Sunday.
The Singleton police station has a force of 24 officers. It's manned around the clock 3 days a week, but for only 16 hours a day during the other 4. It's a situation Police Minister Ted Pickering promised he'd rectify when he visited the town last April.
It was a meeting that we were all invited to as a Shire Councillor and the Chamber of Commerce and the businessmen, to hear him announce to us that he was going to press ahead with the 24-hour police station from 1st of September 1991.
But that was before the election. Now, with the new roster due to be implemented in just 6 weeks, the plan has been scrapped. Mr Pickering is on holidays at the moment, but his office did say the decision was made on the advice of former Northern Region Commander Charlie Parsons, who told the Minister the extra resources could be better used elsewhere. But the people of Singleton say the Minister knew the arguments for and against the idea when he made the promise.
I'd like to think the man was above political motives, because I think it was more a bigger issue than political overtones. But what else can it be now that the election is over and we lost the seat for the Liberals in this area? So why keep your promise?
Member for Cessnock, Stan Neely, was surprisingly guarded in his criticism.
I think political expediency was really the situation. But as I said, I hope not. I hope the Minister still has a commitment to the people of Singleton. I hope that he will ultimately fulfil his promise.
Staff levels at all New South Wales police stations are reviewed each year. Bruce McKenzie, NBN News.
"18-year-old Jason Hall was on his way to work at the Macquarie Fair shopping centre when his car left the road at the entrance roundabout. The Mazda sedan crashed through a light guard railing and landed nose first at the foot of a car park retaining wall, the impact trapping the young driver against the steering wheel and dashboard. After a police rescue crew cut away the car's door, ambulance paramedics, fearing the driver might be suffering back injuries, gently cradled the young man as they fitted him with back and neck braces. As friends and workmates looked on, the rescuers worked with extreme care to avoid aggravating any possible injury. Freed after about 30 minutes, the driver was taken to the John Hunter Hospital. His injuries have now been listed as minor. In another accident overnight, a 20-year-old man from the Wingham district was killed instantly when his panel van slammed into 2 trees on the Wingham-Taree Road shortly after midnight. He was Alan David Murray of Killawarra via Wingham. The impact of the accident tore the engine from the Holden van. The Manning Valley Volunteer Rescue Unit was called to the scene to free the driver's body from the wreck.
It's 125 years to the day, and at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, that the paddle steamer Kawarra tried to cross the gale-swept bar at the entrance to Newcastle Harbour. What was to unfold was Newcastle's worst maritime disaster, with 60 people losing their lives within sight of land. The Kawarra was a 64-metre iron paddle steamer making its way from Sydney to Rockhampton. When caught in a gale off Newcastle, its skipper decided to run for the shelter of Port Stephens, but changed his mind and headed for the infamous bar crossing at Newcastle. The vessel was swamped by giant seas, its boiler fire doused and storm sails ripped to ribbons. The Kawarra was pushed onto the Oyster Bank, already the graveyard of many other ships and now the foundation of the Stockton breakwater. Frightened passengers clung to the ship's mast, waiting for rescuers who never came. The town's lifeboat was late in being launched, and when it was, many of its oars snapped trying to reach the wreck. The lone survivor of the tragedy was swept out to sea, clinging to wreckage, and was rescued by the Nobby's lighthouse keepers. This small and simple memorial is one of the rare artefacts recalling the wreck. The Newcastle City Library has mounted a photographic display of the maritime history of that period, capturing the spectacle of a port bustling with sailing ships and a coastline littered with wrecks such as the Adolphe and the Susan Gilmore. A living link to our seafaring past is Captain Jim Fletcher, one of the founding members of the Newcastle Maritime Museum and a former harbour pilot. Now, aged 80, he's writing a history of the port.
I feel a bit like history myself now. I'm getting on in years. Newcastle has been one of the major ports in the world, and the records should be kept for posterity.
Each of the hoppers was carrying 100 tonnes of coal which spilled out across the tracks. Repair efforts were hampered as night fell and heavy breakdown cranes were brought in to help lift the wagons clear. Rail services north of Maitland were disrupted last night and buses were used to ferry passengers. By 5 this morning, though, most services had returned to normal. An SRA spokesman says a faulty wheel bearing on one wagon caused the accident. An investigation is underway to determine why it failed.
This is Housequake. Along with Zeers Records and the newly formed Newcastle Music Network, the band is trying to bring a new big world of music to the Hunter. A dozen record stores have agreed to install a special local bands rack to help fans locate recordings by their favourite artists.
What it means for Newcastle musicians is that they have a place for their music to be produced, and it's a higher profile for Newcastle music than ever before. Before, people could walk into the stores, but they didn't know if the store had any Newcastle music. They also didn't know where the Newcastle music was in the store if they had any anyway.
Housequake is a popular funk rock band which has teamed with the brass section of Vegemite Reggae and the vocal tones of Marie Hawker for the big world single release. The song has been independently produced and recorded in Newcastle, along with the artwork and promotion for its release. The first copy sold moments after it hit the shelf.
Big world. Big world. You better learn to follow your through. Big world. Big world. Big world. Bigger than you.
Why anyone would want to coach a top-level team in Newcastle at the moment is beyond a lot of people, but David Waite and Tom Wisman have taken over the reins mid-season amidst a hail of controversy. Wisman takes over the Falcons with only 2 wins to their name and a swag of losses. After all the drama, it's time to get on with the job of rehabilitation.
I don't know if it's relief, but it's certainly a challenge, and I'm not one to back away from a challenge. So the fact that I had the opportunity with the Japan thing to actually step in now and take the team on, I'm looking forward to it, and I think we can do some things that will help to improve the team.
Wisman feels lucky in that he has had most of the season with the team already, and he makes no bones about what needs to be done.
Just need to stop the slide. We've lost too many games in a row, and we've got a team that we think can win ball games, so it's a matter of getting back to work on some basics and getting an attitude change, basically, to get the players believing that they can win.
And is it just Newcastle that seems to have more than its share of coaching problems?
It's not just in Newcastle, Mike, it's anywhere, and that's the job we take on. I really didn't want to see the events happen that did happen. I was all for Ken finishing the season. That was the agreement that I had made, and I really wanted to see it happen in that way, but the owners saw it differently. That's between them and Ken. They've come to me, and I felt like I would take the opportunity and make the most of it.
It's still early days and students at Glendale High School have a lot of work to do to get this vehicle ready. But in 2 months it will take to Amaroo Park along with 134 other machines for the Shell Mileage Marathon. 3 years of competition have prepared students for the race, which is designed to squeeze every last kilometre from a litre of fuel.
Well, we use a small engine, and we've worked on the motor to reduce the lift in the camshaft. We've tried to get the gearing correct so that we can run it in one gear, and also by letting the motors idle during on a downhill run.
The winning school last year in the two-seater event achieved 162 kilometres per litre of fuel. Glendale believes this year it can go close to that mark, but winning is not everything.
It gives them an insight into motor vehicle construction, the frame making, engine reconstruction, engine rebuilding the motors for the cars, and it also gives them a sense of achievement.
Once the machine is trackworthy, drivers will be chosen and practice begun. However, Glendale is a long way from Amaroo Park.
We practice in the playground, but unfortunately we keep hitting the stools out there and breaking wheels. But it's a chance for the boys and the girls that are interested to participate and learn to drive before we get them to the track.
The event over 4 days begins at the end of next month. Choice tallied the prices of 2 shopping baskets around the country, one containing leading brand items, the other the cheapest available product.
We actually select a basket, if you like, a basket of 40 different groceries, what the average sort of household shopping list is for a family of average size, kids, pets, all those sorts of things.
On average, Newcastle stores were the cheapest on both counts. The brand name basket cost $63.69 at Franklin's Charlestown. Jewel Food Store at Warners Bay had the cheapest no-name groceries. The Central Coast was the second cheapest area for brand products, but was 8th on the list of plain wrap items. Cities in Western Australia, the Northern Territory and Tasmania fared the worst.
Problems like small population, lack of competition and probably the tyranny of distance make a difference there in prices.
But it's all good news for hunter shoppers.
Especially if you're on a budget, and with 2 children like we are, you have to budget, so it's a really good news for us.
But according to Choice magazine, there is even more good news for shoppers this year. The Consumer Price Index has increased by 30% since 1987. The price of an average basket of groceries has risen only 23%.
We're actually saving, if you like, over the last 4 years on what we used to pay for groceries. That's probably also an indication of how much more we're paying for other things that go into the CPI calculation, things like housing and health.
Alison Peters, NBN News.
The
The Flemington car park, it wasn't. There were no chicken and champagne breakfasts here, but the monster barbecue atmosphere was enough to attract a record crowd.
We've got something like 60 buses here today, and indications are that we'll top last year's record of 5,800. I think we're looking at least 6,000 people.
In fact, on Dr. Jerd's Cup Day, Cessnock becomes a jungle of grass and glass, and the juice is everywhere. A fair portion of the crowd could be scratching its collectively aching head tomorrow morning, looking for an excuse to take the day off work. Unfortunately, most of the best ones were used up today.
It's a work day. How do you come to be at the races?
Roster day, mate.
I don't worry too much about work now. I'm over that stage.
Well, I told the boss I'll be in tonight. Whether I'm there or not, it'll be a different story.
As for the race, well, most of the money was for short-priced favourite Trevino. Jockey Robert Thompson had already won the race 5 times, and many expected today to be no different. But that turned out to be just another piece of dubious jungle juice logic. The winner paid a handy $14.70 and $3.10. Golden Jack returned $3.90 and Proud Avenger $2.80. The Quinella was worth $78.40 and the Trifecta a whopping $1,946 even.
Gloucester may seem an unusual place to find one of Australia's top junior golfers, but for 5 hours every day, 19-year-old Rachel Hetherington can be found swinging her clubs on the local course. In the last month alone, Rachel has won both the South Pacific Junior and Open Classics at Surfers Paradise and the Queensland, Victorian and New South Wales Junior Championships. On Saturday, she's off to Sydney for the New South Wales Amateur Open, then to Brisbane for the Queensland Amateur Open, followed by the same event in South Australia. It's a hectic schedule, but Rachel believes the sacrifices are well worthwhile. So where do you hope to be in 5 years?
I'd like to be travelling around the world and playing on all the great courses. I'd like to become really good, and I think I could with a lot of practice.
While Rachel practices alone most of the time, 1 week every month, she travels to Brisbane to see her coach Ian Trigg, the man behind players like Ian Baker-Finch, Peter Senior and Roger Davis. But golf is an expensive game to play as an amateur, especially when you take it as seriously as Rachel.
In monetary terms, with the way Rachel has pursued a career, like she doesn't work, she just plays golf, I would say that it's in the vicinity of about $20,000 a year.
To ease the financial burden, Rachel could turn professional. And while she's the pride of Gloucester Golf Club, her most devoted fan is her dad.
To say that I'm proud of my daughter would be the greatest understatement of a lifetime.